friends, I am Mary and I am the mom here and mom behind the computer. I know right now I am talking in March of 2020, so we are kind of in the midst of sort of a global pandemic, unfortunately with the coronavirus, COVID-19, and that's changing lives for a lot of people who may be watching this video. For some of you it may not be. I know for me, a lot of what is going on and that people are needing to do, like homeschool and work from home, are things that I already do. But I know that this is a huge change of life for a lot of children and a lot of parents and a lot of caretakers and just a lot of people in general. So earlier this week, most children that I know across the US began doing quarantine away from their schools, self-quarantine, that sort of thing. A lot of them with their parents who are trying to figure out homeschooling and things like that at this time. And I know that this is a huge adjustment for those children and those parents. And while I am absolutely no homeschooling expert, I have been homeschooling my little girl who is now 5. I have been actively homeschooling her since she was about 1, and I mean that very loosely, meaning we would spend like 10 minutes doing intentional learning, that sort of thing, when she was little. We're up to about 30 minutes now, which I think is all that she needs, and we work in education and learning throughout our day. So I have learned some tips after working with my daughter for that many years that I think will apply to a lot of different ages, because they're more generalized tips and definitely help, hopefully, parents, because I honestly, sometimes we're the problem, right? Sometimes we're the issue, and then you have this situation where your child is also something that you can't predict. So I'm going to share a few of my tips that I have learned. I have a notebook over here if you see me looking at it. I'm going to share some of the tips that I've learned over the years, and I hope that it'll help you. I know that I was talking to some of my friends yesterday, and I heard some similar struggles, which I think are completely valid and understandable. And so I shared some of the things with them, and hopefully it helps them and hopefully it helps you. And I'm praying for everyone who's making this transition, that you will find it to be a good thing and a fun thing. Okay, my first tip is don't stress. I know this is a stressful time, not only from the homeschooling aspect, but the world has a lot going on and things feel super uncertain right now. I am personally a Christian, so I totally suggest praying and giving that to God, if that is something you feel like you are comfortable with. And I can speak from past uncertain experiences in my life that works wonders. It's a beautiful thing, and it helps in ways that you could not even dream or expect. Also, just in general, don't stress. I am a firm believer that if you truly just love your children and care about them, that you're not going to fail at homeschooling, whether you're a full-time homeschooler or just this sort of interim substitute homeschooler for the time. Especially if you're an interim substitute homeschooler at a time, you're not going to screw up your child's learning, especially in however long we're in this situation. I know it's uncertain right now, but most schools are off for 2 weeks. So if you're planning for 2 weeks, and that's what ends up happening, you're definitely not going to screw up your child's learning in that time. Don't stress about it. If you stress, that never leads for a good day. I know, because I've been there. I've been stressed out about trying to make everything fit into a day and trying to make sure that I do enough. And honestly, your child learns more from how you act and learns more from their everyday routines than they do from a sit-down learning time. It's not to say that those sit-down learning times aren't important. They are, but they're not the primary way of learning, and your child will learn much more from you throughout your daily interactions. And if you're stressed about that, they're not probably going to be learning the things that you want them to learn. My second tip is focus on this time to really make some memories. So you are in a unique and special place, that this is something that we've never really been through before, and you even have sort of a special place over us regular homeschoolers, that this is an unusual situation for you. I remember when I was in school, there was a huge blizzard in our town that our town was not prepared for, and we were out of school for about a week. And I remember some of my most vivid memories from that stage in my childhood life because we had that special time together at home as a family, and we had to be at home. And there were just some really special things that I remember about that time, and I always look back and smile upon that. So the biggest thing I'm suggesting to people who aren't used to being home is focus on making memories during this time. Focus on just having some really fun time with your kids. Do some things that are a bit unusual. While keeping structure and routine at home, but do a couple of fun things and make homeschooling really fun for them, whatever that means to your child. Maybe it means some really sensory activities. I know my little girl loves her some slime and different things, and those can be incorporated in learning for a lot of different reasons. Maybe it's playing extra games. Games are great for learning. I'll discuss that a little bit here. So just focus on maybe having some game nights, or maybe watching sort of an educational documentary, that sort of thing. Focus on cooking something fun, or if you're able to, go outside and play some really fun like games in place of PE, that sort of thing. Work on making those memories and really truly having fun with your children, and letting them know that this is a special time for you as well. So even though it feels very uncertain and we don't know what's coming up next, and it feels that way for our children too, I'm sure, we can make this sort of a fun time because it's going to happen anyways. All right, my next tip is school doesn't need to happen all day. Homeschooling was something we always wanted to do, which is why I've been sort of being intentional about guiding learning from such an early age with our little girl. And one of the things that I was most encouraged about when she was very little and I was reading up and watching things about homeschooling is that it doesn't need to happen all day. And that wasn't necessarily the perspective I had even when we made the decision that if God was willing and it was best for our children, that we wanted to homeschool. That wasn't the impression that I had at all, but when I listened to those people who had been homeschooled or who had homeschooled their children talk about how little time you truly need for dedicated homeschool, and the reasons why, such as learning happens everywhere, such as when you think about a school day, when you truly think about it, how much time is spent managing children. So how much time is spent doing discipline, telling children to sit down, moving them between classes, creating sort of group dynamics so that they can get along with their classmates, that sort of thing. It's really a good amount of the day. So depending on where your child is age-wise and things like that, you may be homeschooling as little as 30 minutes a day. Honestly, for preschoolers, I don't think I could get much more than that out of my little girl, and I don't think it's recommended to force that. We do learning throughout the day, so we may do more than that eventually throughout the day, but when we sit down at a table and do activities, I try to not do more than about 30 minutes a day. As a high schooler, I'm sure I don't even have any perspective of where that's at, but I have heard that about 4 to 6 hours is all that you need. 6 being like a major learning situation that you're trying to do, but probably more like 4 hours if you're trying to cover a big curriculum. And honestly, even in this situation, I doubt that someone in high school is even covering that at this point. So don't feel like I send my child to school for 7 hours, I think is what an average school day is, and I need to fill that time. You don't. You in no way have as many children at home as are in their class, and you're not doing all that classroom management along with your child. So cut it back, cut it way back, focus on it. Make sure your child knows that if we just stay on task and focused, we'll be done with this in a little bit and you all can have some free time, you can play, that sort of thing. And that is good for everybody involved. Okay, my next thing to remember is that learning happens everywhere. So this was also something that was sort of a hard concept for me to grasp as well. I wanted my child to make sure that she learned all of these great things and all of these wonderful things that I was hearing. But truly, when looking back now, especially because she was younger and we haven't been through a lot of things, but even looking at her life at 5 years old, learning happens everywhere and it's really awesome. So I know some people feel really strongly against the TV and videos and things like that, but my little girl has learned so much if we just give her the right shows to watch. So we're at the stage now that she's 5 where she watches a lot of what I call like junk TV that I cannot find any learning that I want her to do in. But I also try to make sure that she also watches, which were some of her favorite shows and still are, PBS shows. Those are amazing. PBS kids shows are amazing. I'm trying to think of some of the other resources. There's some great videos that are based on books that are great learning resources and things like that. I can't tell you the amount of things that I've asked her. I'm like, how did you know that? Because it's not something that my 5-year-old should know unless I taught her, and I know I didn't teach her. And she says, Curious George, it was on Curious George, or it was, you know, it was on Peg and Cat, which is a math show, that sort of thing. So look for those shows that you really feel like teach something, whether it be emotional intelligence, like if your child is younger, Daniel Tiger is a great one for that. Maybe teaches children the way you want them to live. Maybe even just engages them in critical thinking. A lot of game shows will do that, and things like that. So I'm not saying only keep your kids on educational shows, because honestly, that's a real, like, I can't limit my child's what she watches. She still watches the things that I'm like, oh, that, ugh. And honestly, besides, I think Doc McStuffins, everything I found on Disney Kids, I feel that way about. I'm not saying that Disney Kids is bad, but you know, they're just shows that she loves that I just let her watch because it's entertainment. But I also try to guide her to some of those educational shows, and when she was younger, I did limit it to that, to shows I felt good about, and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, which I did not feel good about, but she enjoyed it. So watch for those. Learning also happens in the kitchen. There are so many learning activities in the kitchen that you can do if you involve them in cooking. Depending on their age, just following directions can be it. Learning to experiment can be that when they're older, depending on the amount of resources that you have at this time, don't get me wrong. Mathematics is a huge thing in there. That can be from counting to fractions to anything. And just building self-confidence. I talked about this a bit earlier. Having game night or a game day is a great way to learn. And this doesn't have to be just with educational games. There are some amazing educational games out there, but you may or may not have those in your stack. My little girl and I played Old Maid the other day, and Old Maid is not something that I would say is an educational game, so to speak. However, what we did was she learned to follow directions and take turns. And then when she was done, we counted our piles by 2s, which is something that she's learning in school. And then when she was done, I had her take her amount and my amount and subtract my amount from her amount to see how many more she won. And consequently, her reward was she got that many high fives. So we covered a bunch of math that day, and that worked really well. And there are other games. Scrabble is a great one if your child can read and is working on words and things like that. That's a great option that you might have. There are just a million ways to learn with playing a game, and sometimes you just have to kind of think, well, how can I do that and make that fun for my child? I talked about this a little bit in the last tip, but get your children involved in real life. Get your children involved in the kitchen. Get your children involved in managing the house. Get your children involved in maybe planning and things for maybe what you're going to eat based on what you have prepared, what you have planned and what you have prepared, that sort of thing. Get your child involved in real life and help let them learn these skills during this time. There's not a lot of time in an average American's life, especially if you have older children, where you are just focused on staying home. And I know from personal experience, we have a lot of activities that we do at some seasons of our life, and staying at home really helps have that concentrated time for learning household skills, which are so important. And so I try to include my little girl in those at whatever stage she's at, and I think everybody can benefit from that. Eventually, God willing, you're going to have a bathroom to clean. Eventually, you're going to need to make a meal. Eventually, you're going to need to do laundry, and those are not skills that we almost ever learn in a school these days. And it's a great opportunity to take this concentrated time to learn that with your child. Okay, my other tip is hide your learning time. So again, I try to keep my dedicated time, which is the time that I sit at the table going through lessons or doing an activity with my child, very short. And I suggest that no matter what age they are. Whatever you think is very short for that child's age, I suggest that. But hide learning times in other times of the day so it doesn't feel so much like, oh, this is another thing we have to do. It feels more like this is an opportunity we have as a family. So one of my biggest tips that I have for people, just especially who have really young children fitting in learning times, is the example that I have is I could add on, I have picture books that I want my little girl to read. We go through the list of Read Aloud Revival right now, and there are some really great picture books that I want her to be exposed to. I think if I added it on to our current sit-down reading time, she would just be sort of mentally out. We do some read-alouds, like a very short chapter book during learning time that we combine with another learning activity, but I think if I had her sort of focusing on a picture book, she would be out. However, part of our bedtime routine is we read a story, so I let her pick one of those books that are in our stack, and we read those as part of our bedtime routine. She loves it because she kind of feels like she's pushing bedtime, which she's not. I love it because it's part of our routine. If we miss everything for homeschooling that day because we're out or something like that, we almost always get our bedtime story. So I know that that's something that's done. There are just so many different ways that you can sort of hide learning throughout your day. A lot of people do learning at breakfast time and lunchtime because their kids are sort of there, whatever you want that to be like. And so I think really hiding that learning throughout the day makes it easier on everybody. All right, my last tip is to give your child choices. Like I said, this is a very uncertain time for everyone. And I know that this has to feel so uncertain for children, especially children that are being pulled from school right now, because it's such a change in routine. It's so unexpected, and it's not even something that as parents we can say, oh, I remember when this happened and you know, in the past. I mean, there are very few times that almost everyone in the US is at home and away from their situations and things like that. So this has to feel very uncertain, and that makes you feel very out of control. So as much as possible, give your child choices and give them guided choices. This made all the world of difference with my daughter. So what I do is I try to get out the things that we're going to do in a day. I kind of lay them out before her, and if I'm able to, I say, which do you want to do first? And she'll pick which one she wants to do first. And once I started allowing for that when it was appropriate, it really changed our dynamics, because she felt like she had some control. I felt like we were getting everything done and we weren't having these major fits of control issues and things like that. And it really worked well for all of us. So definitely look for ways that you can give choices throughout the day. Maybe that is letting your child explore a new topic. Maybe that is letting them choose what order they do activities in. It could be a lot of different things. So those are my tips. I hope they help a bit. I know that this is a stressful and worrisome time for a lot of people, including myself. It feels very uncertain right now. And I just encourage you to pray about it and just to try to let as much stress as you can, especially around teaching your child at home, let that go and just enjoy the time and make some wonderful memories. If you have anything else you'd like to know about homeschooling, please let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please be sure to subscribe. I will have more videos about homeschooling in the future. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a blessed day. Bye-bye.